Hey, this is Paul Ollinger, comedian and host of the Crazy Money Podcast. You're listening to Chasing Dreams with Amy J.
Very cool, Paul. Very
All right,
cool.
great.
Hey, Dream Chasers, this is Amy J, and thank you so much for tuning in to episode 204 of Chasing Dreams. Guys, we are over the hurdle of 200 episodes. We are continuing the trek. Can't believe we're here at 204, and I have an amazing guest for you guys, Paul Ollinger, who you just heard. He's a national touring stand-up comedian. After achieving success in the corporate world, he was one of the first 250 employees. Among them, he was the first one of at Facebook, which blows my mind. He finally decided it was time to give in to his true passion, stand-up comedy, which is a story in and of itself. But since leaving his job at Facebook, Paul made the world of stand-up comedy his full-time job and provides his audience with hilarious but honest, no-nonsense approach to the everyday. Paul is also the host of the Crazy Money Podcast. It's a podcast in which he interviews entrepreneurs, celebrities, authors, and artists with a humorous perspective on money, wealth, and careers. And, the show focuses on how we think about and live with money as a society and as individuals. And I can only imagine that you need that humorous perspective to kind of make that, such a serious topic fun to listen to. So let's get to it. Paul, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. And so to break the ice, we're going to do some icebreakers.
All right, let's break some ice.
All right. So I got a bunch of questions randomly. We're going to pick about 3 or 4. Let's see how it goes. Let's just see how you do.
Trivial Pursuit cards over there?
Well, just that question of where would your dream picnic be served?
My dream picnic would be served on the bluff at Goldeneye in Jamaica.
Oh, that sounds like a place I need to go to.
It's the best.
Of all the places, Jamaica.
Absolutely. I just turned 50 and I went there for my 50th birthday and took a few friends down there and we had the greatest time ever. Goldeneye is the resort where Ian Fleming wrote all the James Bond novels, and they've created the most incredible atmosphere. The place is magical.
Oh, I got to put that on my bucket list. That sounds amazing.
It's without a doubt.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you so much.
All right. What dramatic event happened in your town that people still talk about today?
The Super Bowl from 2 years ago, where the Atlanta Falcons blew a first half lead in the most tragic and Atlanta way, was maybe the worst thing that's happened in Atlanta in the past 30 years.
That's fair. Maybe we shouldn't dwell on it, but yeah.
It was
That was rough.
it was soul shaking.
It was rough.
Yes.
I was rooting for Atlanta that year.
God, well, you have to. I mean, you have to root against Tom Brady because of.
This is also true.
Let's move on. Let's
not go there. All right. Oh, we're going to skip that one. All right. What kind of music would cause you to leave a fabulous store?
Ooh, boy, that's a good question. There's so much bad music to choose from, Amy J. Because me, well, now I'm blanking, but I definitely am a person that, like yesterday, where was I? Oh, I was going to a show. I was going to an open mic and I was early, so I sat at a sushi bar next door, and they were playing like, I can't remember what it was. It was like, it just wasn't working for me, but it was like maybe like late 60s doo-wop or something.
Oh.
And I was just like, this is the wrong kind of music for a bar for you to try to enjoy a sushi roll.
That's not the kind of music I would expect.
Yeah, it's like, what are we at a diner? I mean, like, anyway, that
would do it.
Doo-wop would be.
You watched The Simpsons? You ever see that GIF where Grandpa walks in, takes his hat, puts it down, walks right back out? That's what I see you doing if you heard that music. Walk right in, well, let me go right back out.
Yeah, I that was not conducive to the overall environment in that restaurant.
Well, let's see if this question will help. What was the best TV sitcom ever for you?
Ooh, well, You know, as a kid growing up in the 80s, we watched a whole lot of MASH and MASH reruns in our household, but I'd say the best one was Cheers. I remember watching, especially in college, coming home after the studying was done, and hanging out with my buddies and watching episodes of Cheers and laughing our heads off. Was pretty fun.
You know, I was not old enough for Cheers at the time, but I remember watching, I probably watched Cosby when it was okay to watch Cosby. And
Yes,
then I remember Wings. Do you remember
Wings.
Wings?
Yeah. I remember Wings, but I was never a Wings guy.
Mm.
Was that an offshoot of Cheers? It was an offshoot of something, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Cheers though. I know Frasier was an offshoot of that, but I don't know if
Totally.
that one was, you know?
No,
Um,
I never really watched the Wings. I didn't watch the Wings.
so let's talk about this interesting career you got going on.
Let's do it.
You become one of the first 250 people at Facebook.
Hmm.
What makes you want to join Facebook? Because I can imagine at the time it didn't have the popularity or notoriety that it does today.
I needed a job. That's how I
That's fair.
found my way there.
That's fair.
So I'll go back a little bit in time. I was doing stand-up comedy in Los Angeles full time from 2005 to 2007. I had wanted to do it for a long time. And after I paid off my student loans, thanks to working at Yahoo after the dot-com bubble,
Hmm.
Yahoo rebounded and its stock uh, grew very quickly, and I saved enough money to pay off my student loans and put some money in the bank. And I'd been saying since I tried comedy for the first time when I was in graduate school that if I ever was single and had enough money to live for a few years, I was going to give comedy a swing. And so in 2005, I left Yahoo and I went and did comedy full time in Los Angeles. And I was terrible when I started. I was a little better than terrible 2 years later, after I had done 400 shows or so, opening for really great comics. Um, but I realized that you don't just quit your job and then like a year figure out how to do stand-up. Going from zero to a sustainable pace in stand-up comedy is an 8 or 10 year journey. And Ralphie May, the late Ralphie May, told me one night early in that period in the green room, he said, "Don't worry, you'll start to get the hang of it after about 8 years." And I was like, 8 years? I don't have 8 years to
Yeah.
figure this out. Like, this needs to work pretty soon, or I got to go back to work. Which, after I got engaged to my wife and mother of my two wonderful children, uh, I did go back to work. It was about 2007, and I got engaged, and I was like, gosh, maybe I need to get a job because I don't want to mooch off my wife.
Family, right? Yeah.
And about that time, the phone rang, and a buddy of mine from Yahoo, who was running the West Coast of Facebook sales team, called and said, "Hey, I don't know what's going on with you in stand-up comedy, but if you're interested, we need a sales guy in LA where I was living." And I was of the mindset to take him up on it. And at the time, when my wife said, "Well, what is this Facebook company?" And I said, "Well, it's growing really fast, and someday it could be as big as MySpace."
Wow.
I really said that. I really said that. It was about 25 million users. And by the way, I just happen to be wearing my Facebook T-shirt.
The irony is there.
But I don't walk around sporting the Facebook gear every day 8 years after I left the company, but I just happen to be wearing it today.
It
Um,
was meant to be.
yeah. So that's how I ended up, and I'm very proud of having worked there, and proud of the friendships that I made there, and proud of what the company has done. Um, Not everything perfect, but I'm very proud to be an alum of Facebook. But that's how I got there initially, because I was trying to do stand-up comedy and I needed a job, and I was very happy to be a part of the 25 million users that were using the tool at the time. Today, it's over 2 billion that use Facebook every month all over the world.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And so when you went to Facebook, did you quit comedy entirely? Were you working on it on the side? What was the mindset there?
I bailed completely,
Yeah.
and I kept trying to do it for a while, for a few months, but it just I'm pretty all in kind of guy, and if I decided that if I was getting married and starting a new job, that I needed to be focused on both of those things, and that half-assing comedy wasn't when, when that half-assing comedy wasn't going to work if I was going to succeed on the level that I wanted to succeed at
Sure.
work. And that means, 50 to 80 hours a week, depending on the week.
So that being said, was that also part of why you left Facebook? Can you talk about what led you to making that change? Because you kind of flip-flopped in a sense.
I've been flip-flopping my comedy and corporate world experience for I don't know, 15 years now. So I worked at Facebook for 4.5 years. I was promoted twice I ran the Southwest region, and then I ran the West Coast region. And living in Los Angeles, I was flying up to headquarters in Palo Alto quite often. Their
Mhm.
headquarters is now in Menlo Park, which is just down the road from Palo Alto. But they asked me to join to move up to be at headquarters, and at the time they did, I didn't have another 3 or 4 years worth of commitment to Facebook in me.
Mm.
And there's a variety of reasons that partly because my mom was sick back here in the Southeast, partly because of the difficulty in being part of the sales team at Facebook at the time, and partly because there was something inside of me that really, around this comedy and creative thing, that was eating at me. And I didn't know it at the time, but I really wanted to be doing something else. As great a company, as exciting a future as that company had at the time, I couldn't articulate it, but I wanted to be doing what I'm doing now, and that tension drove me to essentially leave the company.
So it's interesting because I recently had to make a similar kind of decision due to my father's health, leaving a company I enjoyed, coming back to Maryland to take care of him and whatnot. And I don't regret that. I don't, you have to do what you have to do. Same, sounds like you were in a similar position. When you left the company though, did you know comedy was going to be the thing you were going to try again? Or were you like, I just got to find a better fit somewhere else, doing something else besides this?
I didn't know that comedy, I was not willing, I was too scared to admit to
Yeah.
myself that I really wanted to do comedy. And in fact, I was really burned out. And the lessons I've learned from leaving Facebook are that I didn't have a plan, and I don't regret leaving Facebook. I would have left at some point before too long after that. I
Hmm.
regret how I left Facebook, that I left without a plan. I
Mm.
left I left going away from something, not moving towards something. And I think that's because I was burned out and I was tired, and I needed a break. I probably just needed a sabbatical. But so I didn't have a plan when I left, and it took me a long time to admit to myself that comedy was really what I wanted to do.
And by that time you had what, probably 2.5 years under your belt having truly given comedy a shot before you kind of went back to it?
Yeah, maybe about 2 years full time, and then a little bit of
Change.
part time before that. So maybe, yeah, 2.5 years full time equivalent.
So what's the impetus? I mean, you have 2 years where it didn't really work out so well. I mean, you did your best, you tried, right? And then
Mhm.
you stopped. What makes you come back to something where you seem to have a passion for, but wasn't going as well as you thought it should the first time? You know what I mean?
Well, it was going well. I was progressing. I just didn't realize how long the path
Ah,
was. When I
okay.
left to go do comedy, if you would have sat me down and said, "You shouldn't quit unless you're going to dedicate a decade to this," I would have been like, "Well, then I'm not going to quit, because I don't have a decade's worth of money, or I don't have, a
Sure.
decade's worth of energy and focus."
Hmm.
And um, the path was just much longer. I was getting better. I was meeting more people. I was getting invited to do things and auditioning for
We're
things.
hustling. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so, but I just wasn't I had a plan B that was pretty damn good. It was better than most people's plan A.
Hmm.
So, and I think in comedy and many artistic endeavors, if you have a plan B, then you're going to be tempted to take it, because trying to invent yourself as an artistic person. I say creative person. I don't mean to limit creativity to the world of arts, but if you're trying to invent yourself as a
Sure.
creative person, you need to give yourself a decade's worth of runway.
And so having done that, now you've been in it for almost 10 more years, I think. It's 15 years that you've
Well,
done.
it's I left Facebook 8 years ago. I screwed around for 6 months and then tried to get going in comedy and writing again. And one night I went out to an open mic and bombed so bad that the next morning I started looking for a job again, because I was like, I don't I don't have what it takes to make it through this. And then I went back to work for a year as the president of the software company. And 6 months into doing that, I was like, the company wasn't doing terribly well. And 6 months into it, I was like, this isn't what I want to do. I've been blessed with this crazy good fortune of Facebook stock. I have flexibility to do whatever I want to do. And given anything that I want to do, this is not the choice I should be making. And I went and I said, I'm going to quit after a year. I mean, eventually after a year, I came to this decision that I was going to quit, and I was going to write every day, and I was going to go back to doing stand-up comedy. And I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was going to give it my full attention. And I don't know what else I would do at this point.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because I feel like I'm just compelled to do it. I spoke yesterday with the founder of a nonprofit called Year Up that is changing the lives of tens of thousands of young adults. And I have tremendous admiration for him, but that's not what I'm called to do.
Sure.
And so I'm just following what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, and how it manifests isn't kind of up to me. It just sort of happens.
Well, I'm a big believer that it's about the journey and not that final destination. So like if you're having fun, if you're enjoying comedy and what you're doing, then that's what's important. Because at the end of the day, it's not, hey, did you make the goal? It's how was that life? How was that journey you just had? And it sounds like you were enjoying it once you put comedy full time and you started making that progress that you wanted to make.
Yeah, enjoyment is is a
Was that too much?
relative term.
Oh, yeah.
It's like I'm doing the thing that I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. I'm working on things that matter to me. Sometimes and that's the sort of high level long term view. Sometimes the days are a grind. Some
Sure.
days I feel like a failure because I'm not getting done what I want to get done, or I'm not getting the traction. Pardon me, or I'm not getting the traction that I want to get in the business. Other days feel like I feel like I'm really on the right track, and those days are great. But like overall, 10,000 foot view, I'm doing what I want to be doing. But that doesn't mean that every single day is enjoyable. And that's a point I want to really emphasize to people who are out there thinking about chasing their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think that when you quit your job and chase your dream that it's all going to be easy. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really freaking hard, because in work, you've got people telling you what you're supposed to be doing. You have roadmaps, and they might feel like a grind, but they're a luxury. Once you start trying to figure it out on your own, you're like, God, I'd kill for a map. I'd kill for a boss telling me what to do, because I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing today. And I could go and work my ass off on something for the next 3 years, and it could be the wrong place for me to invest my time. So it's just, it's satisfying that I'm doing what I want to do, but like chasing your dream in and of itself isn't going to make you a happy person necessarily.
That's a good point. And I'm glad you said that, because sometimes we think, uh, even with the people I talk to who are like, I'm going to chase my dream. Do you realize it does take work? It doesn't just, it's not like that. Right. And for you, looking back on your journey, were your mentors right that it was a grind? Wait till 8 years and then see how it goes. Was there a changing point for you?
Well, I'm approaching that 8 year investment in stand up, and things are starting to open up a little bit, and I'm better. I'm just better than I was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was like, why am I not getting more opportunity? And now I look back and go, well, you weren't as good as I am today. And in 2 years, I'm going to look back at me now and go, I was a little naive to think that I should be getting more opportunities than I was getting, because it just takes time. And it takes time to develop your craft. It takes time to develop your act, to develop your material. And Yeah, I'd say 8 to 10 years is pretty much what it takes to get competent at this art form.
And it hasn't been a slow journey or a quiet, well, let me not, that's relative to you, but it hasn't been a quiet one. You've done some wonderful stand-up. I listened to your, as I told you offline, your Jeff Dunham, you opened for him, right? And then
Yeah.
just saw I can't remember where I saw it. You were a headliner at a comedy show recently, I think.
Yeah, I headlined West Side Comedy Club in New York City late last year. I headlined Caroline's on Broadway earlier this year. So I'm making
Amazing.
progress. And
Yeah.
yeah,
But you're not even just keeping still with comedy. So now you've written a book. It was called You Should Totally Get That MBA or Get
mhm,
an MBA.
yeah.
Uh, and I saw you do I'm gonna call it a skit kind of comedy video about law school versus MBA.
Yeah, that was fun.
Given I went to law school, I take a little offense to it, but I
Good.
laughed nonetheless.
Good.
Laughed nonetheless. And so you've been still keeping busy with these things, the book and now a podcast and the Crazy Money podcast. What made you want to start that?
Well, I'll get to the specific answer to that question, but
Hmm.
you know, if you do want to go down the path of being a writer or a comedian or somebody who's expressing herself through these kinds of programs, you're going to have an evolution. And I wrote that book, You Should Totally Get an MBA, because I sat down and I was like, okay, I've got a lot of experience and insights into business. I've got a lot of experience and insights into humor. So I want to bring something to life that expresses those two things. And I reread that book a few months ago, and it's very small. It's a very niche product for a very small number of people, but I laughed out loud probably 15 or 20 times. And so I'm proud of what I built, but it's not exactly it's not the platform I want to leave with the world, you know?
Right.
I do believe it's helpful to a small number of people, but as you evolve and go, okay, I did that, I can do more. What else can I do? And, you know, after I left Facebook, I was asked to speak to a lot of civic groups and startup incubators and things like that. And for a couple of years, I talked about the Facebook experience. But then I was like, this isn't who I am anymore. This is not about where I'm going. It's about where I've been. So what experience could I share with these people that I think would be valuable to them? And I started talking about the experience I had when I made money. I grew up one of 6 kids in a very loving home, but things were tight financially, or at least I felt that they were,
Okay.
because my brothers and sisters were always, fighting over that last piece of frozen pizza. And so I had some economic stress, and I thought, hey, I'm going to grow up and make some money so there's no financial stress in my home. And so when I made money at Facebook and I left, I was like, hey, my life is going to be perfect. And for 3 or 4 months, it was awesome. And I worked out and I got back in shape and I traveled and my wife and I did cool stuff. And I really bonded with my kids and I read all the books on my nightstand. And then one day I came home from dropping my kids off at school and I turned on my computer and there was nothing there. There's nobody asking for my help. There's nobody giving me opportunities. There were no customers complaining. There was just nothing there. And I was like, well, okay, who am I? What am I about? If I lost work as an identity and I felt lonely and depressed and adrift, even though I had all this money, and I was like, oh, wait, so work isn't only a paycheck.
Mm.
It's about camaraderie. It's about relationships. It's about meeting challenges. It's about learning. It's about belongingness, as Maslow would say. And so I didn't know what I didn't know about work until I quit. And so money has been making these decisions for me in the back of my head without me even being aware of it. And so I started to speak to people about my experience after the exit, after I had this big experience, because I think the subtext of a lot of the technology world is, hey, we're going to start this company, we're going to build it, we're going to sell it for a lot of money, and then we're going to be rich and we'll be happy. And
I
that's
think you're
not
right.
and that's not how it works.
Hmm.
Yes, money solves a lot of your problems, and it's all else equal. It's better to have more than to have less, especially, if you're talking about you having very, very little. But past a certain point, more money doesn't make you any happier. And that's been proven by psychologists, but sometimes, and economists, but sometimes you have to live it to actually to understand that experience. And that's where that's a long answer to your question. Why am I doing this podcast? I want to explore how our relationship with money affects our decision-making and our overall happiness.
Having talked and done some 20 plus episodes, 25 plus episodes, I think, what is the most surprising thing you've learned? What could you say?
Well, I think the universality of this issue,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that it's just not addressed. I don't think it's being addressed. If you look at what's out there from a financial publishing standpoint and from podcasts, the majority of these conversations are about how to make money,
Yes.
how to invest money, and how to
Yes.
save money,
You
right?
were right.
So picking stocks, clipping coupons, and winning the lottery in some form or fashion. But that's not what this is about. This is about how to handle money and how to understand what we want from it so that we can optimize our happiness, that we can live the kind of lives that we want to live.
See, it's interesting. One of the things I've said is I think that I think TV, Hollywood puts the perspective that people forget. There are people that are happier living off of $30,000 than people who are making $150,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a matter of, it's not the fact that they have more money. It's they found something in themselves to be happy with, right? It's not just about the money that they make.
It's about knowing your wants and needs. And I think it was Seneca, it may have been Epictetus, that said your wealth isn't defined by having a lot, it's defined on having few wants. Mm-hmm. And it's the relationship between what you want and what you have that defines your wealth. If you don't want very much, you don't need to have very much. If you can live within your means, our desires are our desire to own things and to purchase things leads us into so many traps. We go and overspend, and then we put things on our credit cards, and then we're in this spiral of being trapped by the credit card companies. And I had that experience when I was 25, and I felt powerless. And I woke up feeling, it wasn't, when I'd wake up in the morning, not a half hour would go by before I started worrying about my money and how I didn't have any flexibility. And it robbed me of my autonomy. And so when I made money, or when I first got out of school and out of business school, I had $80,000 in loans, and that was 22 years ago. So that'd be like $140,000 today. So I wanted to pay those off. And the richest I've ever felt is the day I paid off my student loans. I'm not kidding.
No, I believe
because I bought myself back, and I have a lot of money today, a lot more money, but it's great, but I don't feel as wealthy or as palpably excited about my financial life as I did back then.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. My 20s, when I first had my first real job, I was under the illusion that I needed all these material things. I had racked up credit card debt, and it wasn't until my 30s when I got rid of that I could breathe and feel like I could do what I wanted because I didn't have that hanging over my head. Now, if I could do that with my student loans, that'd be a different thing. But I imagine that same freedom would come once I get rid of it. But I think you're absolutely right. We just don't realize, like now today, I don't shop as much as I used to in my 20s. I don't need to. I don't, like my mindset has changed, kind of what you're talking about. And I think we don't realize how much we create versus what we actually need until we grow up and put ourselves in a different position or change our perspective.
Yeah, and I think if I could change one behavior in this country that would make people better off, it's just to have them understand what they want and what they could spend their money on that would actually make them happy. Yeah. And, a lot of people have a lot of reasons why, they shop because it takes their mind off their problems for a little while, but it only makes their problems bigger. And, I'd love to see that trend in our society reverse itself.
Well, I think it's.
By the way, I'm super funny, and I'm talking about a bunch of downer stuff right now, and I just want to.
Just put that out there.
Yeah, I just want to go on the record to remind people I'm a comedian. I'll be at the Laughing Skull Lounge later this month in August. No, but I mean, like I have two kind of like modes. I have like super silly, make fun of stuff, and then I get like I said about not doing comedy while I was at Facebook. I was like, I have to focus on this because I want to do a good job. And when I start talking about serious stuff, I get pretty serious. But just as a reminder, I'm hilarious.
Well, you're still balancing the podcast, this comedy career that you have. I'm curious, as you're moving towards comedy and you're still working through your acts, you're perfecting your routines and whatnot, what can we expect from you? Are you planning to put a DVD together or anything? Are you trying to put a show? What can we expect? Still working
No,
on your
I've got an EP, which is a an album that went on a diet called Alive on the Upper West Side, which is from the headlining set that I did at the West Side Comedy Club in New York City last December. And that's available on iTunes and Amazon and wherever you find digital content. But yeah, I mean, I want to look, I guess the progress of a comedian, I'm in kind of what where I am right now is I'm a pretty good minor league ball player.
Okay.
You know, maybe even going to the minor league all-star game. So I'm going to a lot of festivals around the country. I'm going to be at the Big Pine Festival in Arizona, in Flagstaff, Arizona, later in September. There's some other cool festivals that are coming up that I can't mention yet. But those are where kind of like the next generation of comics gets discovered and worked on. So the next thing is, well, you want to get on TV, you want to get a Netflix special, you want to get an appearance on Tonight Show or on Jimmy Kimmel. Those are things that I'm working on too. The podcast is an opportunity for me to bring not just humor, but sort of some philosophical ideas to life and to talk about things that matter to me and get my name out there at the same time. And so I don't, who knows? Like like I said, there's no roadmap. There are guideposts, and the idea is you just got to keep working and getting better at comedy. And eventually, as Steve Martin says, you got to be so good they can't ignore you. And at a certain point, I feel like I'll get there. And I mean, I'm pretty good. I'm not great yet, but I'm pretty damn good. And so we'll see what happens over the next few years.
What is your most memorable performance that you've had to date that stands out, that, when you look back on fondly?
The that show at West Side Comedy Club back in December, it wasn't the first time that I headlined, but it was the first time I had been in that club, which is a really neat club. It's in a neighborhood where I used to live when I was right out of business school. I have a lot of fond memories. And there were about 120 people in the room. I knew most of them. A lot of them were my friends and former colleagues and customers. And it was a really special night for me. It was just great because I think one of the reasons you do comedy is because you want to feel understood and you want to make others in the room feel understood. And when those two things match up, that's when you have a great night. And that happened that night, and it was really great. Of course, I headlined Caroline's on Broadway in March, and that's a legendary stage, and I was very, very flattered to be asked to do that. And that was great too. But the first time, it just all really came together that first night in New York back in December.
Awesome. And guys, we'll have links in our show notes so that you can find his EP, so you can support that and definitely check it out. And so, that's why it's great to hear how many, and especially that one that you've recorded is one that you really enjoyed and stood out from. What is a lesson for upcoming comedians that may be listening to this podcast that you would give to them?
I would just say think in decades.
Mm.
And I think that anybody's going to chase their dream, whether it's to start a business, build an app, create a movement. You got to think in decades. And I just turned 50 years old. I don't have that many decades left. But if I wanted to reinvent myself, I have to give myself the space to do that. And that I have to remind myself every day that even though I've put in a lot of work, I'm still not at a decade yet. And it's a conundrum because, Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours, call it a decade of work. even though that's not how the math works out if you're working a 40-hour week, but just call it a decade's worth of work.
Sure.
You can't find out how good you're going to be until you put in the work, but you can put in the work and still not be that great. Or you can put in the work and you can be great and not be noticed. That's just how the world works. You know, I've done some angel investing this past couple of years with some brilliant people who know are incredibly connected. And sometimes the businesses just don't work out, and that's the way it goes. And so you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to put in the time with no promise of reward other than the opportunity to do that thing that you want to do, and to have the answer to the question, what would happen if I gave it my all?
I've never had or received that advice, thinking in decades, but I can see how powerful that is, and just kind of changing your mindset with it.
Well, that's what when I went to go do comedy the first time,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't in my mind. I'm glad I did what I did, by the way.
Sure.
But I mean, it's all worked out tremendously. I've been very, very fortunate and lucky in my life. But I think if I had been told that when I left, I wouldn't have left at that time. So I got two years of that decade in 15 years ago, but they weren't all in a row. You know, here I am later in life. I'm set up with a great wife, beautiful kids, and with a nest egg that allows me to do this. So it is easy for me to say that because I don't have to go back to work next year.
Sure.
Unless something crazy happens, knock on wood. But but I'm also committed to just saying, like, I'm going to give this thing, you know, several more years. If it just doesn't work out, maybe at that point I'll make the decision. You know, I started this podcast, like, I'm not doing any fewer than 100 episodes until I decide whether or not it's you know, it has the opportunity to go somewhere. And I'm 20. I think we put up 25 episodes so far. I'm getting the kind of feedback from people who listen to it that makes me go, all right, this is working. These are the kinds of thought-provoking things I would want to hear from people who
Sure.
listen to the podcast.
No, that's great. And that's what you want, right, from a podcast is to have and stir that kind of emotion into people and that kind of thought.
Yeah.
So we've gotten
Again, I'm hilarious, just to remind you. I'm really, really funny.
You're the one answering the questions.
I know.
I just put a topic out there. So here's your chance. We're going to play a quick game.
Let's do it.
There is a timer on the screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Oh, wow. You got all the tricks.
Yeah, you know, every now and then. All right.
I can see it.
There's going to be 30 seconds on the clock. You are going to select this or that. Which would you prefer? The average in 30 seconds is about 9. Let's see how you do. Right? Because, guys, remember, he's hilarious. So let's see what answers he comes up with.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Indian or Thai?
Indian.
Sitting or standing?
Standing.
Bond or Born?
So what was that?
Bond or Born?
Oh, Bond, for sure.
Noise or silence?
Silence.
Solo or team?
Ooh, team.
Card games or board games?
Board games.
Oh.
What was that? How many was that?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So not bad.
All right.
You took some time thinking about some of your answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the next one was going to be
I'm going to go with
Hogwarts or X-Men.
Was it what?
Hogwarts or X-Men. That was going to be the next one.
Neither. You know what? I don't know any of that stuff. I don't.
Never really followed it, got into it?
I don't know. I don't watch any of those. My kids are into all that stuff, but I don't watch any of the superhero movies. People are like, you haven't seen Black Panther, you're a racist. It's like, no, I'm just not a nerd. I don't go to any of that stuff. I don't.
It just really isn't my thing, guys.
It's not.
So Star Wars, nothing.
Oh, well, Star Wars is different. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, but
how is Star Wars not nerdy?
Star Wars came out when I was 8 years old, right? So, I mean, I remember seeing it in the theater with my friend Tom Spalding.
So it was dorky. I mean,
well, I guess it was dorky, but there's a real story there. It's you know, Star Wars is real. It's not people who can fly. It's real. It's real people in that bar in I don't know. And
Yeah.
lightsabers are real. I don't know why. I dig Star Wars, but I'm not going to watch like I don't know. I don't know. Star
Did you
Wars.
watch any of the new ones? Or is it just
Well,
classic first three, that's it?
well, no, my son is kind of more into that kind of stuff than I am, but
Mhm.
I've watched all of them only because I just wanted to watch a movie with him.
Sure.
So I've seen like Revenge of the Sith and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing like the first three, but which actually aren't the first three, but
Right. 4, 5,
first
6.
three that were released. But yeah, so I've watched it, and it's cool that like I at least understand a little bit about what the narrative is, so that when he's making his clone Legos, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Boba Fett or whatever.
You can be in with the lingo that he uses.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, I use Boba Fett in a joke about how 23andMe is going to clone all of us.
Really?
Yeah, I promise you, it's hilarious. As previously established, I'm hilarious.
He's hilarious, which you can find out by watching his EP or listening to his EP
That's right.
because it's audio only, right?
It is audio only. Alive on the Upper West Side.
Link in the show notes. You guys can find it at amyj21.com/episode 204. Paul, love the conversation. If these guys want to find more about you, where can they find you and connect with you on the interwebs?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Paul_OLLINGER.
Mm-hmm.
Ollinger, Paul_Ollinger. And my website is paulollinger.com. Sign up for my email list. You can see my shows and links to podcasts there as well.
And you're not just limited to Atlanta area. You're going all around, right? I mean, you just did New
No,
York.
I'm going to be in Columbus, Ohio on September 5th. I'm going to be doing a private event in Cincinnati on the 7th. I'm going, I've shows coming up in New York later this year. And I can't be at that festival in Flagstaff in September, and hopefully a few other places in October, November.
All the dates on your website?
Yes, at paulollinger.com.
Fantastic. Guys, be sure to check it out. Paul, any last words for our guests?
Good luck with your dreams. I was going to say something really pithy, but look, I follow your heart, but don't be a moron when you're doing it,
Yeah. Hey, that's good advice. Y'all pay attention to that one. Don't be a moron while doing it.